Get out of this lobby." The voice was cold and hard as ice. Gregory Vance, the manager, stood behind the front desk like a judge wanting everyone to hear him. His sharp eyes scanned the woman in front of him, from her simple black hair to her black t-shirt and tight jeans. In his mind, a verdict had already been reached. You don't belong here. He couldn't have known that in just 9 minutes in the very lobby, he was so arrogantly defending that woman would end his career and the careers of his entire team. The moment he tried to humiliate her was the moment he signed his own death warrant. Aisha Carter walked in, alone. She had no team of assistants, no designer bags, as an accent, nothing that could prove her status by their standards. Just a black t-shirt, tight jeans, and a calm look in her eyes that was already used to this kind of judgment. Each of her steps on the glittering marble floor was light, yet carried an invisible weight. The weight of self-assurance. The weight of being underestimated in the past. The entire hotel lobby, which had been noisy with conversations and the clinking of glasses, suddenly paused. An eerie silence spread as if everyone was holding their breath, waiting for something to happen. Aisha approached the front desk. Behind the counter, Gregory Vance, 48, stood ramrod straight arms crossed like a defensive wall. Beside him was Lauren Hayes, 30, with her hair in a tight ponytail and a forced, almost robotic smile. And Kevin Patel, 27. His arms also crossed, his eyes narrowed with suspicion. 3 people, 3 sets of eyes, 3 verdicts. Not a single one of them welcomed her. Not a single one smiled. They just stared up and down as if she were a problem to be solved. "I have a reservation," Aisha said, her voice even and without a hint of emotion. "The penthouse suite under the name Carter." To Gregory, the statement sounded like a bad joke. His eyes narrowed, a surge of disbelief in his gaze. "That's a premium suite." "Are you sure you've come to the right hotel?" Aisha didn't answer. She just gently slid her ID and a solid black credit card across the counter. A black card. Gregory's look changed, but only for a moment. He picked up the card with 2 fingers as if afraid it might be dirty. "This is strange," he muttered, not hiding his disdain. "This card looks suspicious." Lauren, without waiting for a command, reached out and pressed a button on the desk. A voice came over the intercom system, cold and suspicious. "Security, we have an unauthorized guest attempting to access one of our premium suites, potentially fraudulent." Aisha's face remained unchanged. Her eyes were still calm. Her voice was still low and clear. "I'm not here to cause trouble. I'm here to check in." Kevin snickered. A smug, knowing smile. "You know, people try this all the time. Found cards, fake names. They think we don't check." From a distance, a young woman named Sophie Lynn, a travel blogger from San Francisco, raised her phone. She whispered to her friend Jacob Reed, "I'm recording this. People need to see what's happening." Jacob nodded, starting a live stream. "We're at the Horizon Grand Hotel in Seattle," he narrated, his voice filled with outrage. "And we're witnessing something absolutely terrible." In a hidden corner of the desk, Elena Ruiz, a young front desk clerk, looked up. Her eyes met Aisha's by chance. A quiet, quick moment of understanding. Maybe it was empathy. Maybe it was fear. Elena took a step forward, but Gregory stopped her with a sharp look. "She doesn't belong here," he snapped, his voice full of authority. Aisha, still unnervingly calm, took out her phone. She typed a message. At the same time, 3 blocks away, in a luxurious office, Nia Thompson, her executive assistant, picked up the phone. "It's happening," Aisha said softly. Nia didn't hesitate. "The system is ready." Gregory was still holding the black card, flipping it over as if waiting for a confession. "We've seen this scam before," he said loudly. "Come in, claim to have a reservation, flash a high-limit card, and then disappear as soon as we call the bank. Not this time." He turned to Kevin, handing him the card. "Lock it up." Kevin, with a look of pure glee, took the card. He walked over to a small cabinet behind the counter, opened a drawer revealing a steel safe. With a dramatic gesture, he placed the card inside and slammed the door shut. "That's the end of you," he said with a malicious grin. Sophie, who was filming, exclaimed, "They just took her card. That's theft, not policy." Jacob stepped closer, his voice full of anger. "That's theft." Aisha stood still, unmoving. Her voice was calm, but now it had a cold, deadly power. "You're going to regret this." In that moment, memories flooded back. When she was 24, Aisha had walked into a boutique hotel in Atlanta after a tiring red-eye flight wearing athletic clothes, holding a boarding pass and a reservation confirmation. The manager there had looked her up and down and said, "You don't look like the kind of person who stays here." The night she had to sleep in her car with Atlanta's bone-chilling cold, Aisha didn't feel sorry for herself. Instead, anger ignited a fire within her. Looking through the fogged-up window, she began to outline the first strokes of a plan. A plan not just to survive, but to take control. That plan became the starting point for one of the largest hotel chains in the country. And now, in the lobby of her own hotel, she was facing the same tone, the same prejudice, the same type of man trying to erase her existence. Gregory leaned forward. His head slightly raised, his eyes full of victory. "Your reservation has been canceled," he declared. "We do not tolerate deception. You're wasting the time of our real guests." Aisha didn't flinch. A sarcastic smile, just a fleeting hint, touched the corner of her mouth. "You mean the guests who are witnessing this right now?" She subtly tilted her chin towards Sophie and Jacob, who were still engrossed in their phones. A few other guests had stopped walking, whispers beginning to spread like wildfire. Elena looked over, her jaw clenched, her eyes filled with a mix of worry and anger. Lauren, fueled by her manager's confidence, stepped out from behind the counter. "You need to leave now." Aisha maintained her calm gaze. "Are you sure about that?" Lauren's voice rang with authority, a confidence borrowed from Gregory. "Absolutely. Or we'll call the police." Gregory sneered. "Go ahead and make a scene. It won't look good for you." Aisha's eyes looked straight into his without blinking. "That's the last time you'll ever speak to me like that." That's when Elena stepped up. Fear had given way to bravery. "She's right. I saw her name in the system this morning. Her reservation is valid." Gregory whipped his head around to face her, his gaze icy. "Say one more word and you're fired too." Aisha picked up her phone again. This time her voice was louder, clearer. "Naya, record this moment. Timestamp the video." Nia's voice boomed through the speakerphone like a thunderclap. "Recorded. System is ready." Jacob leaned in toward the counter, pointing at the black card in the safe. "It says A, Carter VIP. It's real. She's real." Gregory laughed mockingly. "Anyone can fake a card. People like her." Aisha cut him off, her voice calm but full of power. "Finish that sentence. Go ahead." But he couldn't speak. The words caught in his throat as he realized the crowd was growing larger. Aisha took a step forward. Every syllable she spoke carried a terrifying weight. "You have just made the biggest mistake of your career," she said. Gregory laughed, a hollow sound, as if trying to hold on to a last shred of power. "You think so?" She looked him straight in the eye. "No, I know so." The air in the lobby was tense. Kevin, still smug in his role, held up the small safe key like a trophy. "This card is now company property," he announced. "And until the bank confirms, you're not getting it back." He smiled, a dramatic grin. Behind him, the safe door closed with a cold, definitive click. But Kevin didn't see the storm he had just invited. Aisha stood there unmoving. Her silence was more powerful than any words. Gregory, emboldened by Kevin's theatrics, leaned forward again. "You're wasting everyone's time. Get out now or we will force you out." That's when Lauren stepped from behind the counter, adjusted her blazer, and confidently reached out to touch Aisha's arm. "You've been warned. It's time for you to leave." And that's when everything changed. A single touch. A seemingly small act, but it was the final straw. Gasps echoed through the lobby. Sophie, who had been filming from the beginning, shouted. She just touched her. She quickly uploaded the clip to Reddit with a simple caption, "This is happening live at the Horizon Grand." Jacob's live stream now had hundreds of viewers. Comments flooded the screen expressing shock and outrage. Elena, with a newfound strength, stepped forward. "You are not allowed to touch guests," she said, her voice trembling with suppressed anger. "Her reservation is valid." Lauren spun around, her eyes flashing. "Stay quiet if you want to keep your job." But Elena didn't back down. She looked at Aisha, who was still standing there, and moved a little closer. "I won't lie for you," she said to Gregory. Gregory, losing control of his anger, completely dropped his professional facade. "She's trying to scam us," he hissed. "People like her always think they can get around the system." His voice was now lower, more vicious, but the words still reached at least 3 guests standing nearby. An elderly woman with silver hair held up her phone, recording everything. She whispered to herself, her voice full of disappointment. I can't believe what I'm hearing. Little did everyone know Gregory's judgment wasn't just about Aisha. It was shaping his own destiny. At the center of the storm, amidst the curious stares and whispers, Aisha stood still, a living statue. She brought her phone to her ear, her voice still unnervingly calm. Naya, she said, activate the internal system and begin recording the audit. I want every word from this moment on to be saved. On the other end of the line, Naya Thompson's voice was sharp and without a hint of hesitation. Recorded. Timestamps are stored. Should I call Carla? Aisha responded. Give me another minute. At the same time, Kevin, in the peak of his self-satisfaction, leaned over the counter, his voice full of contempt. You're a fraud, ma'am. You think a card gives you the right to be here? Go back to where you belong. A murmur erupted in the lobby. The words were so brazen, so blatant. Elena, no longer behind the counter, had fully stepped out, standing shoulder to shoulder with Aisha like a protective soldier. I've worked here for 3 years, Elena said, her voice steady. And I've seen this pattern before. Every time a guest like her walks in alone, confident, dressed simply, you treat them like a criminal. Gregory's eyes narrowed, a surge of rage welling up. Elena continued, her words like daggers aimed at his arrogance. And every time someone questions it, you say it's policy. But it's not. It's you. Elena's words touched an old wound in Aisha. The memory of a 16-year-old girl dressed in her Sunday best waiting for her parents in the lobby of a luxury hotel in Charlotte. An employee had walked up and said, "This area is for guests only." The girl had tried to explain, but the woman wouldn't listen. The girl was thrown out onto the sidewalk like a vagrant. That shame didn't break Aisha. It forged her. It sharpened her. It made her build an empire to ensure no one else would have to endure a similar humiliation. And now, here she was in one of her own hotels watching history repeat itself. Gregory still wouldn't give up. He turned to Elena. That's enough. I want her out of here now, or I'll have security remove both of you. Lauren, silent until now, quickly added, she refused to provide valid documentation. This is a violation. I'll be filing a report. But the battle had turned against them. Jacob, still live-streaming, pointed the camera at himself. Let me be clear, he said, his voice full of fury. We are witnessing a guest being harassed by hotel staff after providing her name card and ID. Now they're trying to physically remove her. This isn't just bad service. This is disgusting. Aisha turned to Kevin, her voice no louder than before. Give me back my card now. Kevin leaned over the counter, a challenging smirk on his face. Or what Aisha's eyes didn't waver. Or you will be locked out of the Horizon system for life. No job, no references, no appeal. Lauren scoffed, a sarcastic laugh. You have no right to speak for Horizon. But Elena immediately spoke up like an alarm bell. Yes, she does. Gregory's voice cut in sharp as a whip. You've crossed a line, Elena. You don't even know who she is. Sophie from the side chimed in, her voice full of mystery. Oh, she knows. We all do. She turned her camera back to Aisha. Look at how she stands. Look at her composure. That's not a person begging for service. That's a person letting you dig your own grave. Aisha's voice remained even. Kevin, this is your last chance. For the first time, Kevin looked hesitant. Gregory tried to save the situation, but his words sounded hollow. This isn't personal. This is about procedure. But it was too late. Sophie's and Jacob's videos had gone viral. Guests were whispering about what they saw. One man said, I've been coming here for years. Never again. A young woman with a suitcase turned to Elena and asked, Is she really who I think she is? Elena didn't answer, but her silence said everything. And then, an unexpected turn. Elena stepped forward, her voice louder and more decisive. This isn't the first time Gregory has dismissed complaints like this. He's been warned. I logged 3 cases last month. 2 of them were women of color traveling alone. All were dismissed. Gregory's face turned beet red. That's a lie. Jacob turned his camera towards him. Are you sure? Aisha slowly looked around. Every phone was raised. Every guest was paying attention. Her voice rang out clear and powerful. Your time of running this place without oversight is over. Gregory, desperate, made one last attempt. Fine, if you won't leave, I'll call the police myself. Aisha smiled, a cold and powerful smile. Call them. And in that moment, Gregory hesitated. For the first time, he saw something in her face that made him uneasy. Not fear, not hesitation. but power, a quiet, controlled power that was completely beyond his reach. And then the next unexpected thing happened. The surrounding guests began to move quietly, but decisively, stepping up to stand between Aisha and the front desk. They formed a human wall. One woman pulled her suitcase across Lauren's path. A man unplugged his phone charger from the counter and stood next to Elena. Jacob turned his phone, recording the scene, his voice trembling with emotion. They're protecting her now. Aisha, at the center of the chaos, took a step forward. The entire lobby seemed to hold its breath. All eyes were on her. And then she said a single sentence. "This lobby belongs to me." The words didn't need to be shouted. They didn't have to be. They echoed through the space with the weight of truth. Kevin's smirk faltered. Lauren looked down. Gregory blinked as if unable to process what he just heard. And in that brief moment of silence, the hotel lobby, once a place of hostility, began to shift. Power was changing hands. "Get her out of here now." Gregory's voice rang through the marble lobby like a hammer desperately trying to reclaim the control that was slipping through his fingers. The lobby was no longer quiet. Phones were raised, and the whispers had now become open dissent. Gregory's face was beet red, trembling with a power he no longer truly held. "She's trespassing." "She's a liar," he yelled, slamming his hand down on the intercom button. Kevin's voice came over the lobby-wide speaker system, carrying a false sense of authority. "Attention all staff, there is an unauthorized individual in the lobby. Do not engage. I repeat, do not engage with this guest. Fraud alert." The next silence was heavier than the words that had just been spoken. Aisha didn't flinch, but the guests did. Sophie Lynn yelled from the corner of the room, her voice shaking not from fear, but from fury. "She's not a fraud. We're recording everything." Jacob's live stream had now passed 2,000 viewers' comments pouring in like a tidal wave. "Theft. Unbelievable. Is this happening at a luxury hotel?" A mother backed away from the check-in line, whispering to her teenage daughter, "They are going to regret this." Lauren, though shaken, still followed Gregory's lead, grabbing Aisha's arm again and pulling her toward the door. "Come on, you're embarrassing yourself," she hissed through gritted teeth. That's when Elena Ruiz stepped between them. The youngest employee in the room, the only one who had consistently spoken up, stood shoulder to shoulder with Aisha. "Don't touch her again," she said loudly and clearly. Lauren froze. "You're going to be fired," she spat. Elena didn't back down. "Then fire me," she shot back, "but you are not touching her." Gregory lunged forward, his frustration exploding. "Do you have any idea who she is?" he bellowed at Elena. "She's a fraud. Look at her." He gestured to Aisha's t-shirt, jeans, and sneakers as if they were undeniable proof. "Penthouse guests don't dress like that." Aisha's voice was calm, composed. "You keep repeating the word fraud as if it will make your mistake disappear." She took a small step forward. The distance between them was closing like a noose tightening on Gregory's narrative. A memory flashed back. Aisha was 29, flying to a conference in Los Angeles. She wore a navy suit, professional but not ostentatious. The man behind the desk looked at her ID, then at her, then back at the ID. "It can't be you," he'd said. "We need another form of ID." She gave him one, then another, but they still made her wait to be verified for 2 hours. In the meantime, she watched 3 white men walk in and get their rooms without showing any ID at all. That night, she drafted the policy she would later enforce in her own hotel's zero tolerance for guest discrimination. This moment was imprinted on her just as that one had been. "Call security." Gregory yelled at Kevin, who had left the counter and was now lingering near the office hallway, looking unsure. "Call them now." But Kevin hesitated. His confidence was cracking, because in front of him was not a woman begging for entry, but one who knew something he didn't. Worse, the guests were watching. Sophie's phone moved from face to face, capturing every guilty twitch, every retreat of power. Jacob, still live streaming, turned to a nearby guest. "Sir, what do you see here?" the man answered without hesitation. "I see someone being kicked out of a hotel where she clearly belongs." Gregory spun around, desperate. "That's slander. She hasn't proved a thing." Aisha calmly turned her phone toward the crowd. "Does anyone want proof?" Jacob immediately shouted, "Show them." But she didn't flash a badge or pull out a contract. Instead, she turned to Elena and asked gently, but her words echoed through the lobby, "Did you see my name in the reservation system?" Elena nodded. Yes, under A. Carter Penthouse Suite. It was a remote check-in, and was it tagged as VIP? Aisha continued. Elena nodded again. Yes, marked as executive-level priority. Ownership. Elena's words from a front desk clerk with the confidence of someone who knew the truth dealt a fatal blow to Gregory's lie. It wasn't just evidence, it was a powerful act of defiance. The lobby fell silent, leaving only whispers of surprise, and Gregory, who was losing everything. The lobby fell into a deathly silence. Gregory, once so confident and arrogant, was now just a desperate man. She could have faked it. She could have hacked the system. He mumbled a last feeble attempt to save the situation. Sophie couldn't help herself. She yelled, "You really think someone off the street hacked your system and brought 2,000 witnesses with her?" Lauren, pale, looked down at the floor. Kevin moved closer, a panicked look on his face, his confidence completely gone. "I locked the card in the safe on your orders, Greg." "What if we were wrong?" Aisha turned to him, her voice full of power. "You were told to steal from me. That is what you did, but you had a choice." Kevin's mouth opened, then closed again. The crowd stirred slightly. An elderly woman with white hair and a floral scarf came forward and stood between Aisha and Lauren. She said simply but with great weight, "You are not to touch her again." Another man stepped up, then a woman with a stroller. Within seconds, a loose arc formed in front of Aisha, as if the guests had drawn a line in the sand themselves. Gregory stood behind the counter, suddenly looking much smaller than he had a few minutes ago. Aisha looked around at the human barrier that had formed without her asking. "This is what happens," she said softly, but everyone heard when silence is no longer an option. Jacob turned his phone to the crowd. "They're standing with her now," he said into the camera, "and I don't think they're going to leave." Gregory's desperation peaked. He yelled over the noise in the lobby, "You're all being manipulated, she's conning you." Then Kevin, who was still holding the intercom mic, whispered a statement that was almost inaudible, but the entire lobby heard it as it came over the speakers. "She owns the place, doesn't she?" The statement hung in the air like smoke. Sophie slowly panned her phone to Aisha's face. "Do you?" she asked, her voice catching. Elena, without hesitation, stepped forward. "Yes, she does." Gasps spread throughout the room. A man near the lobby chairs whispered, "Wait, this is her hotel." Lauren turned to Gregory, horrified. "You said she was lying. I will translate this final portion of the script for you, following all your requirements." Gregory said nothing. Jacob looked directly into the camera. "This is the moment everything changes." Aisha stepped forward again past Elena, past the arc of guests, and walked straight to the front desk, where Gregory stood frozen. "You wanted to throw me out," she said evenly. "You slandered me. You called me a thief and humiliated me in my own lobby." Gregory's mouth opened, but no words came out. From her phone, Nia's voice rang out clearly. "Aisha, Carla is ready. Do you want me to connect her?" Aisha's eyes never left Gregory's. "Yes, now." She tapped the screen once, and Carla Bennett's voice, sharp and decisive, came through the phone's speaker. "Aisha, everything is prepared. We're awaiting your command." Aisha took a breath. "Terminate Gregory Vance's contract. Terminate Lauren Hayes' contract. Terminate Kevin Patel's contract. Remove them from the Horizon system immediately. Freeze their access and document today's events for a legal audit." There was a moment of silent confirmation. Carla said, "Processing." Instantly, Gregory's keycard flashed red. Lauren's did too. And so did Kevin's. They were locked out of the system directly in front of all the guests. No shouting, no theatrics, just justice, silent, complete, and irreversible. In the eyes of every guest present, a single truth became clear. This woman hadn't just saved herself, she had brought down an oppressive system in under 9 minutes. Gregory Vance's last shred of composure broke as his keycard flashed red. He stared at it stunned, as if it had betrayed him. Kevin's face turned white as his card also failed, locking him out of the Horizon system on the spot. Lauren stood frozen, her mouth agape in disbelief, still clinging to the edge of the counter as if it would save her job. But the lobby had changed. What was once a stage for dominance now pulsed with the rebellion of truth. Elena Ruiz, no longer the silent clerk, stood straight beside Aisha. Her jaw set, her voice firm. "They've been removed," she said loudly enough for all the guests to hear. "They no longer represent Horizon." Gregory exploded a final roar of desperation. "This is illegal. You can't do this. This isn't how a hotel is run." He turned to Lauren, desperate. "Call corporate, get someone on the line now." But Lauren's hands trembled as she checked her phone. Blocked. The Horizon internal system had locked her out of her employee login. "I'm locked out," Lauren whispered, panic blooming on her face. "Everything, it's gone." Kevin tried to move toward the safe to retrieve Aisha's card, but Elena held up a hand. "Stop right there," she ordered. Her voice now carried an authority, a newfound certainty. "You no longer have the right to handle guest property. Step away from the counter." Kevin hesitated, then slowly backed away. Gregory, seething with humiliation, exploded in the worst possible way. "You really think this circus makes you a leader?" He snarled at Aisha, his voice cracking slightly with desperation. "You tricked your way in here. You publicly humiliated us. You'll be sued for this." Aisha, still calm, tilted her head slightly. "You think leadership is about hiding things?" Gregory manipulating perception. She gestured to the guests around them. "Leadership is when the people who have been overlooked for too long finally speak up and they are heard." Just then, a woman from the crowd spoke up her words. A match that lit a fuse. "You never took my complaint seriously last spring," she said. "I sent an email about an incident at check-in and nobody responded. You were the one who replied and dismissed it." Gregory spun around to look at her face, then looked away, recognizing her. Another voice spoke up. "I was double-charged for a room and didn't get a response until I threatened a lawsuit." One by one, guests started speaking a chorus of past injustices. Elena stepped forward again, now empowered. "I logged 3 complaints in the last 2 months about biased behavior at the front desk. All were dismissed." Gregory signed off on the dismissals himself. Lauren backed up until her back hit a wall, her eyes darting between the guests and her former colleagues. "Greg, what is this?" she whispered. They are turning on us." Gregory's voice was now a whimper, a final effort to cling to his old power. "They're just angry. This will blow over." But it didn't. It grew. Jacob panned his live camera across the lobby. "This is what a reckoning looks like," he said to his viewers. "They went too far and now the guests are talking." Then came the moment that sealed it all. Sophie Lynn opened her Reddit post, which was now going viral. "It's out there now," she said loudly. "Everyone is seeing it." Gregory's desperation flared up again. He lunged toward the counter, yelling, "Delete it! That's private property!" But 2 guests blocked his path. One, a quiet man wearing reading glasses, simply said, "No, you don't get to silence this." The other guest, the woman with the floral scarf, held up her phone. "Your face is all over the internet. Maybe think twice before making more threats." That was the breaking point. Lauren turned to Aisha, her voice shaking. "I didn't know," she said. "I didn't mean for this to happen." But Aisha didn't nod. She just said, "You were part of it. You watched it happen." Gregory did the unexpected. He turned to Aisha, his voice hoarse, his shoulders slumped. "Why didn't you just say who you were?" he asked. "You set us up." Aisha blinked. "No, I gave you every opportunity to treat me like any other guest. It was a test, and you failed in public." That's when Nia's voice came over the speaker from Aisha's phone. "Aisha, the board has approved a full-scale response to the incident. Carla is ready for your next step." Aisha looked around the lobby, sweeping across every stunned face, every guest still holding a phone, still bearing witness. "Connect her." Carla Bennett's voice, sharp and composed, came on the line. "Gregory Vance, Lauren Hayes, Kevin Patel. As of this moment, your employment contracts with the Horizon Hotel Group are officially terminated. Access has been revoked. Legal filings are being prepared. Ms. Carter will be personally overseeing the next steps. To our valued guests, new leadership will be addressing your concerns immediately." The weight of the words was like a thunderclap. Kevin tried one last protest. "This is crazy. We built this place," Kevin said, his voice cracking with bitterness, a final attempt to hold on to something that no longer existed. Aisha cut him off, her voice full of power. "You didn't build anything. You just guarded the doors and turned away the very people we claim to serve." She turned to Elena. "Please open the safe and get my card." Elena moved swiftly, professionally. She entered a new code, her own, and opened the safe. Aisha's black card lay there intact, pristine. Elena quietly handed it back, her eyes shining with emotion. It was a small act, but full of meaning, like a return to justice. Then the guests started. One by one, they began to applaud, not loudly, not with chaos, but with a meaningful, quiet calm, as if acknowledging something long overdue. Aisha looked at them and said, not with anger, but with certainty, "This isn't just about me. This is about every guest who has been told their presence is a problem, every complaint that has disappeared, every policy that was used to humiliate instead of serve." That ends today. Gregory, Lauren, and Kevin stood behind the counter, stripped of their titles, their power, and their audience. But the consequences were just beginning. Aisha turned to her assistant on the phone. "Nia, we're going to proceed with a full-scale overhaul of the lobby level. Prepare a statement and a promotion for Elena Ruiz. She will be leading this location." "Yes, ma'am," Nia replied. And with that, Aisha Carter stepped forward, no longer mistaken, no longer anonymous. She had just taken back her hotel, one decision at a time. Aisha Carter stood in the marble lobby, silent and composed, while the 3 newly fired employees stood frozen behind the front desk. Their faces pale, their reputations shattered, their power extinguished. Gregory's eyes, once full of arrogant command, now darted between the guests, the live-streaming phones, and the woman he had just accused of being a fraud. Kevin stared at the now open and empty safe. The only thing that had ever been in it, the black card he had mocked, now safely in Aisha's hand. Lauren was silent, her mouth slightly ajar, her gaze locked on the floor, no longer daring to look at anyone. Around them, the guests stood still, unwilling to look away. The tension didn't fade. It had transformed into anticipation, as if everyone in the room knew they were in the presence of something permanent. Aisha slowly turned, facing the crowd, smoothing the hem of her simple black t-shirt, and stepped forward to speak, not for the cameras, not for the applause, but with the clear, unwavering voice of a woman who had earned the right to every word. "I am Aisha Carter," she said. "I am the founder and CEO of the Horizon Hotel Group. And from this moment on, I am taking back this hotel, not just from the people who abused their roles, but from every excuse they ever hid behind." The words were a shock that spread through the lobby. Phones were lowered slightly, eyebrows raised. One guest gasped, another whispered, "She owns it, the whole company." The comments on Jacob's live stream exploded in real time. "CEO, this changes everything. What a power move." Gregory lunged forward, sputtering. Wait, you can't do that. You're the CEO, you're supposed to. There are procedures, there's protocol. You ambushed us? No." Aisha responded, her eyes steady. "I came in like every other guest, quietly, alone, with respect. The only thing I didn't bring was a sense of entitlement. And you proved without any prompting how your team treats people who don't look like premium guests." Kevin slowly shook his head. "We didn't know." "How were we supposed to know? You didn't have to." She snapped, her voice carrying the weariness of years of being underestimated. "That's the point." At that moment, Elena Ruiz stepped next to Aisha, her voice gentle yet firm. "I recognized her name when she checked in. I saw the key card, the priority status. I knew who she was, but I didn't speak up right away. I'm sorry for that." Aisha turned to her. "You did more than anyone else in this lobby. You spoke the truth. You stood up. And now you will be promoted to Director of Guest Services for this location, effective today." Elena's eyes widened in stunned silence. A few guests started clapping again, a slow, meaningful beat that was not for show, but for justice. A quiet moment of victory filled the lobby. Lauren spoke for the first time in minutes, her voice trembling. "I didn't mean for things to go this far," she said. I didn't know what to do." Aisha looked at her carefully. "You had a choice, Lauren. You made a choice when you pressed that intercom button, when you grabbed my arm, when you laughed, when you watched your colleague lock away my card as if I didn't matter." Then, unexpectedly, Lauren broke down. "It was Gregory," she cried. "He told us how to handle people who didn't look like premium guests. He said we were just protecting the brand's image. I thought that was normal." Gregory turned back furious, his last words full of desperation. "That's a lie." Aisha raised a hand, stopping them both. "No, it's not a lie. It's a confession, and we will be documenting it." Carla's voice came over the phone, calm and cold. "We have logged the admission. This will be passed on to the compliance and legal teams." A few guests nodded in approval. A woman holding her young child said loudly, "It's about time someone was held accountable." Jacob, still recording, said into his camera, "She didn't just fire them, she exposed the entire system from top to bottom." Kevin stepped forward weakly. "What happens to us now?" Aisha said, "You will receive a formal termination notice. Your names will be flagged in the Horizon hiring network. You are banned from working at any of our properties in the future. And if any previous misconduct is uncovered under your supervision, there will be further action." Gregory looked at her like a man who had just realized he had terribly misjudged who not to cross. "All of this just because you wanted to prove a point?" "No," she replied coldly. "All of this is because I am tired of people like you deciding who deserves respect based on what they look like." From the crowd, Sophie spoke up. "They tried to erase her, and now she's rewriting the rules." Aisha stepped aside, allowing Elena to stand behind the front desk. "Restart the check-in system. Hold all reservations that were flagged under Gregory's employee ID. We will reach out to all affected guests and compensate them." Elena nodded and got to work, her hands now steady, full of purpose. Aisha turned to the guests. "If any of you have ever been mistreated at this property today, or in the past, my internal team will be in the lobby. I have directed Nia to open a direct line for all complaints, and we will respond within 48 hours. No form letters, no empty PR, speak just answers." The room was silent, then began to buzz, not with chaos, but with clarity. Guests whispered in agreement. An old man tipped his hat and said, "Thank you for not walking away." Aisha gave a small nod. "I've walked away too many times. No more." Carla's voice came on again. "The media channels have started reporting. X and Reddit are running the footage without a hashtag. The story is forming, but you're in control." Aisha nodded with firm resolve. "Let them talk. Let the public see what happens when a company doesn't just apologize, but acts." Then she turned back to Gregory, Lauren, and Kevin. "You are permitted to leave. Your personal effects will be sent to you. Security will escort you from the building. You are not to speak to or approach any of our guests." Elena looked at her. "Should I notify building security?" "No," Aisha replied. "Let them walk through the lobby. Let every guest see the consequences of unchecked behavior." As the 3 former employees walked through the lobby under the weight of their disgrace, no one stopped them. No one offered sympathy. Only whispers of accountability followed them. And as the glass doors closed behind them, Aisha turned back to the guests and her staff, not with relief, but with determination. "This wasn't justice," she said. "This was the beginning. The reform starts now." With those words, the Horizon Grand Hotel was no longer just a name etched in stone. It became the place where everything changed. Tightened. The moment the glass doors slammed shut behind Gregory, Lauren, and Kevin, the energy in the Horizon Grand lobby shifted from confrontation to transformation. The guests stood in silent awe, absorbing what they had just witnessed, a top-down reckoning that didn't happen behind closed doors, but right in front of them. Aisha Carter, still composed in her simple black t-shirt and jeans, did not stop. She turned to Elena Ruiz, now promoted from clerk to interim director of guest services, and gave her clear directives. "Initiate the reform plan. Start at the top." Elena, no longer hesitant, nodded and immediately got to work disabling the current reservation system, locking all login accounts associated with the fired employees. "Done," she confirmed in minutes. Aisha pulled out her phone. "Nia," she said with finality, "send out the internal memo. Alert regional compliance, diversity operations, and legal departments. I want a full audit of the Horizon Grand for the last 18 months. Guest complaints, employee behavior records, and any suppressed reports." Nia's voice was immediate. "Underway. The media is swarming." A revolution spreads. "But your voice is at the center," Nia said over the phone. "Carla is preparing the rollout announcement." The guests began to move closer to Elena, many speaking softly, unsure if expressing support was appropriate. A woman clutching her reservation confirmation whispered, "Thank you. I was afraid to speak up before." Elena gave a small, gentle smile. "We're listening now." In the corner of the room, Jacob Reed's live stream showed a steady increase in viewership, now over 10,000. His caption had been updated, "CEO takes back her hotel fire's entire lobby staff, real-time reform." The comments flooded the screen. Sophie, now silent for the first time since she started filming, moved closer to Aisha, lowering her phone. "Do you want me to keep posting?" she asked. Aisha nodded. "Just the truth. That's all I'm concerned with." Then she turned to the crowd. For years, Horizon Hospitality promised inclusivity. But policy means nothing if bias is overlooked behind the front desk. Today that changes. She looked at Elena again. Overhaul all staff training starting in 72 hours. We're bringing in an independent company, and every single employee, from clerks to concierge to management, will have to be recertified. No exceptions, no excuses. As Aisha spoke, Carla's voice came on the speaker again. We have approved your comprehensive reform plan. Local media is asking for a statement. We have confirmed your authority to suspend current operations for guest safety. Aisha replied, then suspend walk-in reservations at the front desk. Elena will manually handle VIP guests. The others will be relocated to a partner location downtown with a complimentary night. She turned to Elena. Are you okay with that workload? Elena nodded with certainty. More than okay. Around them, the guests were no longer just an audience. They had become advocates. One man offered to help with luggage. A couple volunteered to pass out water to waiting guests. From confrontation, a community had formed. The lobby now felt different, part recovery room, part headquarters. Then came a development that sharpened Aisha's composure. A notification appeared on her phone screen, a flag from the compliance department. She quietly opened it, scanned the summary, her jaw tightening as she read. Then she looked up, speaking to no one in particular. Gregory wasn't acting alone. The whole lobby froze again. Carla's voice came through the headset, this time lower, more urgent. We've reviewed the archived complaint records for the Horizon Grand. Gregory was sending falsified summaries to regional headquarters. Complaints marked as resolved were never investigated. And we found correspondence between him and former regional director Michael Turner. Aisha's voice grew colder. Turner retired 3 months ago under a cloud of HR violations. No one investigated further because they said he was just old school. Nia's voice cut in. It turns out he was protecting Gregory. So was Lauren. There's a pattern. Aisha closed her eyes for a moment, not to escape, but to steady herself. Then she opened them bright with resolve. We're not just reforming this location, she said. We're going to initiate a full review of all of Horizon, every flagged employee, every buried complaint, every fake resolution. She turned to Jacob, still filming. You can show this part, she said. People need to know that the rot started at the roots, and we're digging it up. The surrounding guests nodded, some stunned, others relieved. A woman in her early 70s whispered, I've been waiting for years to see someone with real authority actually do something. Sophie turned to her live stream. We came here for a vacation, she said, but we've witnessed a revolution. Aisha looked around the lobby. She no longer saw walls or marble. She saw a symbol of what the hospitality industry could become, and what it had failed to protect for too long. This hotel was never broken because of its decor or its design, she said. It was broken because people were trained to smile at some guests and interrogate others. Her eyes swept the room. That era ends today. 3 months later, the Horizon Grand Hotel no longer resembled the place where Aisha Carter was humiliated in front of dozens of strangers. The marble floors still shined, the chandeliers still sparkled, and the velvet chairs still invited guests into quiet luxury. But the silence that once carried judgment now carried welcome. A portrait of Aisha was hung near the check-in counter, not out of vanity, but out of accountability. Beneath it was a plaque. This space belongs to every guest, no exceptions. Guests came and went from the Horizon Grand without fear of being scrutinized for their appearance, their voice, or their clothing. And behind the front desk was Elena Ruiz, now officially appointed as general manager. She had not only shown courage, but had redefined what leadership at Horizon looked like. The reform Aisha started spread beyond Seattle. The Horizon Hotel Group launched a comprehensive initiative auditing all 57 properties across the U.S. Dozens of previously ignored complaints were brought to light, and new employee training protocols were adopted company-wide. Every hotel established a new fair compliance board with rotating guest advisors, anonymous feedback systems, and a zero-tolerance policy for clear accountability. For the guests who witnessed the incident, they received personal thank you letters and follow-up calls, not from a public relations intern, but from Aisha herself. One letter read, "You stood up when others looked away. That matters." Sophie Lynn and Jacob Reed, whose live stream sparked national media attention without a single hashtag, were invited to speak at Horizon's internal leadership conference. There they emphasized the power of real-time accountability. We weren't trying to expose anything, Jacob said on stage. We just refused to put our phones down. But even as the company transformed, the past wouldn't stay buried. 1 week after the incident, Aisha received a message from a former hotel manager in Portland who had worked under Gregory years prior. In a heavy, guilt-ridden tone, he confessed something that cast a darker light on everything. Gregory wasn't just acting on personal bias, he said. There was an unspoken directive from regional leadership back in Turner's time. They wanted certain guests to be treated as low priority if they didn't fit the profile. It was never written down, but we all knew. Aisha didn't respond with anger. She thanked him for telling the truth and passed the testimony to Carla and the legal team. But the confession revealed the final twist of the story. The Horizon Grand scandal wasn't just about one man abusing his power. It was about a system that had quietly enabled it. As news of the confession spread, former employees from other branches began to come forward. An internal Horizon task force was created to reevaluate employees fired under suspicious circumstances. Some were reinstated, others received compensation. Aisha ensured no one was hired or fired without a clear paper trail, and every new manager had to attend a direct accountability orientation. Policy alone isn't enough to rebuild trust, she told the board. There has to be proof that silence isn't rewarded and that telling the truth doesn't cost you your job. Aisha's own legacy changed too. Once known as a private billionaire who built a hotel empire through grit and strategy, she was now hailed by the public as a reformer, not for seeking the spotlight, but for stepping into it to create permanent change. She established a new division within Horizon Forward, a diversity, equity, and inclusion initiative that focused not on slogans, but on measurable results. As its first act, Elena was appointed as a national advisor for frontline guest experience. At the inaugural conference, Aisha spoke words that guests, employees, and those who had endured silent discrimination across the country would never forget. Hospitality doesn't start with the smile you give. It starts with the respect you give to everyone. The audience rose to its feet, not for a CEO who had spoken up, but for a woman who had once been pushed out the door and had come back to hold it open for everyone else.